Hey everybody, it's me, W. Kamau. Welcome to episode 5 of Who's With Me. And also, if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, hit that hype button. I hear that hype button is important. I hype things now too, so hit that hype button. If you're on the regular podcast apps, just subscribe and, hit the share button. Share it with a friend. Everybody, please share this podcast with your friends. That's how we build this. It's really going well right now. I'm really excited about it, but we got to share it with our friends. Please share it with your friends. Thank you. Today, the guest is David Diggs. Super excited to have him on. The conversation was great. You may know David from the most recent season of The Boys. You may know him as one of the stars of the musical Hamilton on Broadway. You might know him from his rap group Clipping. He's a rapper. Or you may know him from just lots of stuff. Snowpiercer, the dude works hard. We talk about working hard and the importance of being with your family. We also talk about the importance of men nurturing their friendships with their men friends. He's friends with Rafael Casal. They met each other in high school. Rafael's also a good person who is too good looking to be such a good person. I don't know how they do it. And also, they're both famously from the East Bay of Northern California, Oakland, and Berkeley, and a little bit of Albany, weirdly. But anyway, we talked about all that. Enjoy the interview when we get there. First, I have a confession to make. I, W. Kamau Bell, used to be a fan of the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I know. It's not. I was bit by the martial arts bug early. As a young person, I grew up in the era of Bruce Lee movies being on television and renting them from the video store. And so I did martial arts as a kid, also as a teenager. So I love martial arts, and I found my pathway into the UFC through martial arts. And originally, when the UFC came out in the 90s, I didn't like it because their whole marketing thing was like, somebody might die. And I was like, I don't really want to see that. But then when Dana White took it over, he made an effort to make it more mainstream, bringing more rules in and weight classes. And that was all great. And so I was there for the prime era of the UFC. Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, my favorite UFC fighter of all time, Amanda Nunes, who was the first champion who was also openly gay in any combat sport. So yeah, shout out to Amanda Nunes, the lioness. And then at some point, I started to just struggle with my UFC fandom. I think it happened around COVID, because Dana White, who was clearly, not a guy that I'd want to hang out with or invite to my house. Just through the struggles of COVID, he did what a lot of people on the right did. They went super MAGA and super Trumpy and super anti the left, even though COVID happened when his friend Donald Trump was president. So I don't know what that had to do with the left, but all the COVID restrictions really put a bee in Dana's bonnet. And so he went super MAGA, not just Republican, but MAGA. He's also spoken at all 3 of Trump's Republican national conventions and calls Trump a friend. And, that's not a good sign. And so I just started to feel like, I don't know if I can support this sport with my dollars anymore. And I started to buy less and less fights. And then a couple years ago on New Year's Eve, he famously was in a fight with his wife that was captured on video. They were in a nightclub somewhere, and she slapped him, and he slapped her right back. And I was like, I'm out. And I knew I was right to be out because a lot of UFC fans were saying, she hit him first. Yeah, that's how chivalry, being a gentleman works. My wife hit me. She had it coming. Oh, you guys are awful. And you're probably going to be awful in the comments if you find this clip. And I had been one of the evangelists of the sport, one of the few left-wing evangelists. I'm actually also a fan of a guy named Luke Thomas, who's also a more left-wing evangelist of the UFC. He's an MMA journalist and also a regular journalist. He's in my book, Who is Government? Luke's a great guy. Follow his work on YouTube. Luke Thomas Gets Political, also Morning Combat, which is his UFC show or his MMA show. Yeah, so I was one of the few left-wing UFC people fans I knew, and I just I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. And I understand that athletes don't always have your politics, that's fine, but they can't be anti my humanity or what I think is good in the world. They can't do that. Recently, some of the San Francisco Giants on Pride Day wore hats with Bible verses that were somehow saying we're not with Pride Day. So it's all right, well, I can't sit for a game of that. I get that we don't have to think the same way, but I can't have you poking a stick in my face while I'm trying to enjoy your sport. So I just left it behind. But Dana White did not care. He didn't care. he figured out a way to keep the sport going. But I think Dana White knew he was losing some left-wing fans. So in his new media deal, he didn't do a pay-per-view thing, because pay-per-view, you know exactly who wants your sport. He signed with Paramount Plus, which is also the Ellisons. And so you don't have to pay for individual fights now. They just come if you pay for Paramount Plus. So I think it's his way of hacking around the idea of like, oh, I don't have to get you to pay for it anymore. You'll just watch it because it's on your app. I did not watch it. And we all have been talking about the UFC recently because of the event that just happened over the past weekend. The UFC Freedom 250 rah Kid Rock USA event that happened on the lawn of the White House that was supposed to be to celebrate the 250th birthday of America, but somehow ended up being moved to Donald Trump's birthday. And that event happened over the weekend. And if you read the reviews of it as a UFC event, people say it was a good UFC event. But if you read the reviews of it as a cultural event, it is pointing to everything wrong in America right now. In particular, one moment. A fighter named Josh Hokit won his fight against, I think he fought Derek Lewis, a black guy, which is not important, but there's not that many black guys in the UFC, so I've mentioned it. So Josh Hokit, who is not a black guy, at the end of his fight, when he was in the ring doing his winner speech, and Josh Hokit is sort of he's doing like a bad version of Randy Macho Man Savage from the WWE. It's like a Timu Randy Macho Man Savage. He's giving his speech, and somebody sort of runs out of steam and clearly just wants to get out of there. And so he turns to Joe Rogan, who's interviewing him. And Joe was dressed like, I think the way I could describe Joe, he was dressed like the junior used car salesman who needs to talk to the manager to decide if you're going to get your undercoating. He was dressed like a maitre d' at a restaurant that's not good anymore. So Josh Hokit turns to Joe Rogan and says, Michelle Obama's a man. Right, America? And the crowd cheers. And I heard this because I was paying attention to the fights through Luke Thomas's watch along and just through following it online. And I saw that, I was like, what? And I pulled it up and found the clip, and that's what the guy did. And to me, any thin layer of belief that this event was about, that was nonpartisan and non-political. Dana White kept saying it was non-political. It was just a way to celebrate America. Even though Dana White is political in everything he does, he somehow seems to think he's not political, while at the same time he's spoken at all 3 Republican national conventions. He literally will say, I'm not into politics, but you spoke at 3 Republican national conventions. So any hint that this was not a toxic environment strewn with MAGA politics went away when Josh Hokit said the thing about Michelle Obama that I don't want to repeat. Again, it sort of ties into last week why I really am anti and have to be loudly anti-transphobia, because transphobia doesn't just hurt trans people, it hurts women overall, because anybody who's transphobic is going to use that as an attack on a woman they don't like. And Michelle Obama, who's just somewhere living her best life, having conversations on her podcast with her brother, just doing her own thing, and has not ever tried to run for politics and has not been involved in politics since Obama left office, is being called a man on the lawn of the house she used to live in. And Joe Rogan just sat there and laughed, which really made me just feel like, fuck you, Joe Rogan. The Kevin Hart Roast, the news story that will never end. Recently, Joe Rogan said, any comedian who criticized any comedian who made jokes at the Kevin Hart Roast, that comedian is a traitor to comedy. And traitor is such a funny word, because traitor is normally used as a word you use when you're a traitor to your country. And I would say, Joe Rogan, I'm fine to be a traitor to comedy. Are you fine to be a traitor to your country? Because that's what you're doing right now. By glad handling Trump everywhere you go and letting this man slowly become the fascist of his dreams, you, Joe Rogan, are being a traitor to your country. I'll take traitor to comedy. Can you handle traitor to your country? All right, let's breathe. Let's relax. We got to clear the air. I got to relax because my guest doesn't need all this bad ugliness in the air, because he is the amazing, the awesome, the incredible Daveed Diggs.